Thank you, Marie. It's really good to see all your faces. Hi. So my name is Karen Iverson Riggers. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm trying to remember how this happened, but in one of the services, there was some dialogue about strategies to stay grounded during this time. And then I was like, oh, I'd like to do this mainly to remind me of grounding strategies that I've picked up over time to help in times of anxiety and overwhelm. And so, tonight my kind of plan is to talk a little bit about grounding strategies. I kind of geek out on brain science, and so I'm going to talk about why they work, like the brain science behind it. And then I'm going to talk through some strategies. We're going to practice some together. And then at the end, I'd really love to hear about grounding strategies that you've used before. So I want to open some time for folks to share at the end too. If you have any questions, I'm really comfortable with you popping them in the chat box. So for me, Marie was talking about like, the verbal feedback is helpful, but it's also distracting as a presenter if you've got a lot of background noise going on. So if you've got assistants like me, also known as 3 children, or cats or dogs or whatever going on in the background or noise, it's distracting for me, like outside noise. But then there's times that I'll ask for your like feedback, and you can use your voice, your physical voice, or put something in the chat box. Really comfortable with both of those. So the first thing that I want to say is, so during this time of uncertainty and grief and collective trauma and to say a lot of the things that we're feeling are normal. It's normal to feel overwhelmed. It's normal to feel anxious. It's normal to feel disconnected, like to not feel anything at all, or have like problems feeling feelings or feeling your body. These are all really normal reactions. So one of the things that's happening right now to many of us, because we're experiencing, like we're living in trauma right now. And so one of the things that happens is that our brains are really good, our brains and our bodies are really good at protection. But right now our brains are really in overdrive in protection mode. And what I mean by that is this constant flooding of, some folks will call them triggers, or things that our brains are processing as a threat, is forcing our body into, you can give me a nod or like a thumbs up if you've heard of fight or flight before. You heard of that, right? Like this is our basic instinct, protective instinct, that when there's a perceived threat, that our bodies react, like they take over the thinking part of our brain and they just react. And that's a protective mechanism, and we need that. But right now our brains are like so overloaded with all of these both very real threats, right? And perceived threats, and then thoughts about, like, right? And so our brains are in overdrive in this fight or flight mode. And when that happens, there's physical, chemical changes that are happening in your body. So whenever I talk about this, I can't emphasize enough that what's happening right now is normal. There's nothing wrong with you, like that you're having these reactions. These are normal reactions to abnormal and difficult things. I'm going to say that again. These are normal reactions to abnormal and adverse and really kind of overload of things. And I think that's really important for us to hold that, right? So a lot of the reactions that we're having, like that folks have been talking, like I'm overwhelmed and I feel like I can't think, like brain fog. Mom, you and I were talking about this yesterday. The term for that is allostatic load. There's actually right now our brains are like, we can't handle all of this, and so I'm going to downgrade you into survival mode. And good luck trying to do anything that requires any higher thought. And so I think it's really important to put that in that context, right? Because many times, and I'm raising my hand, this is me, right? I beat myself up about like, oh, I can't do some of the things that were easy to do before, like multitasking. No way right now. If I try to do more than like one thing at a time, good luck, right? I forget stuff. Like um, and so again, it's this. So Marie asked, is that the same thing as executive functioning? Yeah, very similar, right? Which is this like, I can't do higher level processing. I can do survival processing. Like, oh my gosh, Mom put like forgetting lefse trays. So yes, perfect example. Yesterday we were making lefse, which is a Norwegian flatbread. Okay. And we were having a great time, and we finished and we cleaned up, and I opened the fridge and there was a whole nother tray of lefse balls in there that we hadn't cooked. Okay. And we were all laughing and laughing, and this might have happened like last year at this time, but right now our brains are in overload. And so my first message to all of you and to myself, like I'm saying this out loud to myself, is to extend extra grace and compassion to ourselves, because this is a extraordinary time and a time of constant uncertainty. And so that's put our, like, downgraded our brains into survival mode is the best way I can describe it. Okay. So, so for lots of folks like me who have dealt with and lived with anxiety or depression or times of overwhelm, like surviving other trauma, those kind of things, many times we learn strategies. We think about strategies that work for us. Sometimes I'll talk with folks like, and this has been true in my journey, sometimes it's just getting through the next breath, quite honestly. Sometimes it's getting through a minute. Sometimes it's getting through an hour. Sometimes it's getting through a day. And so so that's where this concept of grounding strategies come in. And so grounding strategies are literally that. Like, if you think about it, it is trying to reconnect with your body and your breath, and really that's it. So Marie, will you share? I sent the PDF for you. So we can share this. My intention is for all of you to have this, but Marie's going to share this document that I created. And so we'll get it to all of you. But so grounding strategy. So why does it work? This is from Dr. Sarah Allen, and she's got this, the site is on there. It's really beautiful, this 7 ways to calm. So why do grounding strategies work? When we start to think about something stressful, our amygdala, the section of the brain located in our temporal lobe, this is like our frontal cortex, right? With the thinking part of our brain, goes into action. The amygdala, right, is the part of the brain that's responsible for emotional responses and fear. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So it's in the temporal lobe in the thinking part, but it's responsible for things like fear. So it's really good in emergencies, but sometimes it kicks into action and detects a threat where there really isn't any. So here's a typical process. You have a thought, negative thought about a situation, and remember, a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's real. And our amygdala says, emergency, emergency, and initiates changes in our body, like increased muscle tension, rapid heartbeat, and faster breathing. These are natural body responses, okay? The amygdala then interprets these body changes as further evidence that something's actually wrong, which then, of course, further activates it and creates a vicious cycle where you become more and more anxious and physically and emotionally overwhelmed. So I love the science of this, right? The sciencey part is it's your amygdala, right? It's a protective part of our brain that senses emergency. But what's happening right now, and I can identify this, like this just happened today. I opened an email from the Appleton Area School District that was talking about like what's going to happen in the fall. And we have no idea. And then my kids are asking me. And so I start getting all, whoa, that's the best way I could describe it, like that. right? And then my amygdala is like, threat, you're going to have to figure out how to, it's not even thinking anymore. It just knows that I've perceived a threat or something that's making me overwhelmed or anxious. And then my amygdala is like, emergency, emergency. And then my muscles start getting tense and I can feel my heart beating, like, and I might have problems breathing. Okay. And then this is like this cycle, right? And so we're in this cycle. Yes. So Tina just asked, is this where we begin to produce cortisol? Yep. Cortisol and adrenaline are two of the hormones that our body creates when we're starting to feel stress. And those are important hormones, except for the part when they're active all the time. And that stuff gets stuck in our body, or that stuff overwhelms our ability to get into the thinking part of our brain, our frontal cortex, that part that's responsible for executive functioning. So that's the science. That's the like why this works. So I want to say this before we even begin, that different strategies may or may not work for you, and that's okay. Some strategies might work, and this is the frustrating part about grounding strategies. Like, you're like, I just want a thing that's going to work. And so some things for me work all the time, and sometimes some things don't work. And sometimes there are things that I haven't used in a really long time, and I find myself pulling them back out of my toolbox. And that's okay. The second thing is there is no wrong way to ground yourself. So I want to say that, like, for a lot of folks, sometimes this is a survival thing, right? And so there's no wrong way to ground yourself. And so I encourage folks, and a lot of times people will label these as bad behaviors, right? And I'm not going to kind of dive down that rabbit hole, but I just want to say that there's no wrong way to ground yourself. And if it's something that's helping you survive, this harm reduction idea, absolutely, we don't want to do things that are harmful to ourselves, but also if in this moment, right? So just want to say that there's no wrong way to ground yourself. This piece I love, and this was a reminder from my friend Katie Demarath Cook about the 4 S's. And so the first is slow down, because so when I read that piece about what's happening with your brain, right? We start, like, our muscles are reacting, our heart is beating faster, all the blood goes from your brain to your body, like, so your body can fight or run, right? And so by stopping to slow down, right, we're going to talk about all different strategies to slow down, because that part about slowing down helps us show up. Okay, so helps us like get out of that fight or flight, like that lizard reptile brain, into the part that we want to try to get in, which is the part that can help us think and process through something. And then I say surrender, because sometimes it means not holding on to whatever that thought is, or the emotion, or whatever it is we don't want to hold on to. And then the last one is stay, right? And the stay piece is that piece that I'm saying there's no wrong way to ground yourself, like, to not beat ourselves up about what we have to do in the moment, whether it's like eating a chocolate bar or like, I'm just gonna say, like, to stay. So those are the things. And the last piece is to be curious. So kids are really good at this. Kids are so good at getting their needs met without even overthinking it like adults do. And so we're gonna do some things that are probably gonna be goofy. And that's good, because you're gonna laugh and you have to breathe when you laugh. So it's okay, right, to get curious. Okay, you can scroll down a little bit. Okay, so the first section that we're gonna go through is breath, okay? And so this is the slow down piece, right? So we're gonna practice all of these different kinds of breath. So I'd encourage you, wherever you are, to just be comfortable. I encourage you, if you can, to literally ground your feet on the floor. This is like when I said grounding, ground, right? There's something about connecting our feet, and even better if you can get outside and take your shoes and socks off and put your feet on earth, right? There's something about that I don't know the science behind it, but it really makes a difference for a lot of folks. And I think part of it is the slow down piece, like when you have to concentrate, like putting your feet on the ground, okay? So the first breath we're gonna practice together is called a 3-count breath. And this is where you breathe in for a count of 3, you hold it for a count of 3, and you exhale for a count of 3, okay? Now, before we do this, I'm gonna say, I didn't say I said at the beginning, you can't do this wrong, but I will tell you, because I will tell myself this, you're breathing wrong probably, because most of the time the breaths that we're taking are in our chest, and we're usually not getting enough oxygen when we're just counting on, like breathing out of our chest. And so I'd like you to put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. And I just wanted you to just feel this. So I want you to take like a shallow breath, like a fast, shallow breath, and see where you feel that in your body. For me, it's just my chest rising. Now I want you to concentrate on feeling that the hand that's on your belly. And I want you to expand your belly like a balloon. That's a belly breath. And that's when we're really getting like in all the oxygen that we need. So the 3-count breath, I'm going to encourage you, if it's helpful, to put your hand on your heart and your belly. But I'm going to count. I'm going to do 3 breaths where I count, and then I'm just going to invite you to do like 3 on your own. So we are going to breathe in for a count of 3. You're going to hold it while I count to 3, and you're going to exhale for a count of 3. Okay? So breathe in. 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, release, 2, 3. Breathe in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, breathe out, 2, 3. Breathe in, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, breathe out, 2, 3. And then do one more on your own. So my dad used to always tell me, like, before I would like do a speech or do something, like have to play a solo on my clarinet for solo ensemble, or do like when I was trying out for the soccer team, he would be like, take 3 deep breaths. And I would laugh because he said it all the time. And now I'm like, oh, before I do anything, I should take 3 deep breaths. Because it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. And so I use this like when my kids have done something where like I'm like ready to like scream. I've done this when someone has said something that makes me really angry. I've done this when I start to get scared. I do this when I wake up in the middle of the night and I've had a bad dream. And it's amazing what that does. So it's, you know, slowing down, it's getting oxygen to our brain. So that's a 3-count breath. So we did that deep belly breathing, and you don't even have to count. So for some people it's helpful to count, right? Because it's distracting. For some people it's helpful to feel what's happening in your body. So when I said, you know, like this works differently for everybody, I'm going to try to give you like as many tools in your toolbox, right? And you intuitively will know like, oh, counting is good for me because then I don't think. Or counting is bad for me because I get distracted. And that's okay. So I just I'll give you as many kind of tools. Okay, so this is volcano breath, and this is a favorite of my almost 4-year-old and 8-year-old. So all of these that I'm sharing work for kids and adults too. So if you have kids in your life right now that are feeling overwhelmed too, like these are great things, and they're great things for you to do together. So volcano breath I use when they've gotten mad about something. Okay, so are you ready? I'm going to do it first, and then we all get to do it together. Okay, so you take your hands and you go like a volcano. Okay, ready? know, it's good, right? Okay. So it's a diffusing breath. That's good to use. 3-count breath you can do anywhere, right? You can do it without somebody knowing that you're doing it. Volcano breath, obviously, they're going to see you doing it. But for some people, connecting motion to breath is really helpful. So that's one. Okay, this is another favorite of my kids. It's called lion's breath. So this breath is you breathe in. Okay, ready? Breathe in. Everybody. Okay, that wasn't nearly silly enough. Okay, I want to see tongue sticking out. Okay, ready? Breathe in. Yeah, that was better. So lion's breath is another really good diffusing breath, and especially giving a voice to it. All right. So that's another really helpful one. Breath of joy. I'm like trying to see my mom, because mom knows breath of joy. This is from our yoga class. So you can do this sitting down. You can also do it standing up. I'm going to do it standing up, but hopefully this, like, you can kind of see me. Mom, you can stand up too. You know this one. So for breath of joy, you can do this sitting down or standing up. You breathe in and you're going to pull it down and say ha, 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 ha. Yeah. Yep, that's it. So that's an energizing breath. So if you're feeling like you're in one of those slump kind of things, like when I'm in one of those energy slumps, I'm often like, oh, caffeine, need caffeine. Then I want to remind myself, like, try 3 breaths of joy first. And then if you want some more caffeine, go there. So breath of joy is a really good one too. Another kind of breath is a mantra breath, and a mantra is just a repeated saying. And so you can choose whatever you want. It could be, I breathe in peace, I breathe out anxiety, I breathe in love, I breathe out anger, I breathe in whatever it is you want to take in, I breathe out whatever it is you want to release. And it can be as simple as I inhale, I exhale. So for some of you, words might be helpful, or numbers, right? These are all tools you can use. Rainbow breathing is another tool that you can use. Same kind of thing. This one's just with colors. So this would be like, I breathe in bright, beautiful red. I breathe out rusty, ucky color red. I breathe in bright, beautiful, warming orange. I breathe out whatever the orange is I don't need. So, this is like, whatever is going to work for you, right? So numbers, words, colors, anything that helps you slow down your breathing, basically. Those are all tools to connect you with breath. There are also like physical tools you can use. So a paper bag is really good, like just a lunch bag. If you're really starting to hyperventilate or starting to have a hard time connecting with your breath, paper bag is good. Bubbles are really good to blow bubbles because you have to slow down to breathe. Or if you're somewhere and you don't have a paper bag, do you see the little hole I have in my hand right there? So that's a good tool if you're with somebody that is in anxiety or overwhelm and they can't do numbers or colors or whatever. And when I've done this with other folks, I do it with them, right? Because sometimes folks can't even process what you're saying. And so cupped hands work too. Any questions on all of the breath pieces I just did? Okay, so that's breath piece. Okay, so breath is one grounding strategy, and those are awesome. You can do those anywhere. Those don't cost any money. Nobody even has to know you're doing it because you could just breathe in your head, right? And there's tons and tons and tons more different kind of breathing strategies. So yeah, this is like, there's lots of different ways that you can reconnect with your breath. So now I'm going to talk about some body methods of grounding. Okay. So I said this before, literally put your feet on the ground, walk outside, put your feet on the ground and breathe and see what happens. So literally put your feet on the ground, but it works inside too. And when I encourage folks to do this, so first, right, you put your feet on the ground and you can get really detailed with it. So you can start and be like, I feel my pinky toe. Oh, I feel my ring finger toe on my right foot. And then I feel my ring finger toe on my left foot. And then I feel my heels. And then I feel and what this is doing, it's another way to just slow down that amygdala and slow down the response that's happening. The second body piece is hot, cold. And so I'm going to encourage all of you to do this. Go in your freezer and take out an ice cube and see how long you can hold it and concentrate on something else. All you're going to be able to concentrate on is how cold the ice cube is. So it's a really good, hot and cold are good ways to shock your nervous system. So there are folks who will literally put a ice cold pack on the back of your neck, which is where right at the base of your head, where your head connects with your neck, that's where that like fight or flight is. And so you can literally put cold on it or hot on it. And sometimes that will kind of like shock your system. For some folks, taking a cold shower or a hot shower or a cold bath or a hot bath, but drinking a cup of hot tea, drinking a cup of cold ice water, and that would be another body thing. Like, and this is like my kids, right? They get, my 3-year-old was just like completely melting down. And I was like, okay, let's check in. He was really thirsty. He like just chugged this whole glass of water. He had been hot outside, and that's what the meltdown was about. So hot, cold is important for us too. So you can think about all the ways that you can stimulate those sensations. So I know folks who will say like a really, 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 really hot bath works, or a really, really, really cold shower. Because what I want to say about some of these grounding things, that sometimes they work right away and sometimes it takes a little time, and that's okay. And sometimes the thing that worked yesterday didn't work today, and that's okay. So that piece about being curious, and I'm going to talk more about how do we how do you create space for having all these kinds of tools. So hot, cold, really, really good. Another one is smell. So smell is a really interesting sense. So all of our other senses in our body are processed in one part of our brain, and the sense of smell is processed in our hippocampus. And our hippocampus is the part of our brain that's responsible for memory. So it's really cool. Like sometimes you will smell something and have like a really happy feeling. And I'd encourage you next time that happens to think about what you smelled. So one for me is fresh cut grass, because I remember my dad cutting the grass when I was little and then going out and running outside. Like we were waiting for him to cut the grass so we can go out and play again in the backyard. And so that smell, I love that smell, right? Likewise, there could be smells that trigger really negative feelings too. So just to be aware of that. But smell is a really good one. So essential oils, the one that is really good is sage for clearing whatever it is. And so you can smell, like, put it on your wrist and smell it. I have a bracelet that you can put essential oils on the beads to keep it with you. Or, you love the smell of chocolate chip cookies, go bake some chocolate chip cookies. So smell can be a really powerful grounding strategy too. Rubber bands. Who knew? So first, sometimes when folks are feeling emotional pain, sometimes physical pain can break the cycle of that emotional pain. And so you can put a rubber band around your wrist and snap it. And sometimes that sensation for people can be really powerful, and can be a good grounding strategy. Likewise, jewelry. So I just showed you that bracelet before. So like we talk about kids having fidgets, like fidget spinners and like fidget cubes and fidgety things. And so for some people, that's really grounding. So I really like these beads. These, this one that I have, some are smooth, some are rough, and it has smell too, and I can pull on it. I've broken these before because I've been pulling on them so hard. And a dear friend of mine, like I was so upset about it. And this friend said, "Oh, you just don't need those anymore." And I was like, "Oh, thanks. Are you sure?" Because I thought I needed it. But that can be a really good, it's a tactile grounding. And jewelry you can take and wear anywhere, right? Bracelets. So beads are really good at that. So you could, find, this one also has like a square bead on it. So lots of different kind of sensations, and you can squeeze them tight. So that kind of thing. Another really nice body strategy, and I just did this with my son last night who was having a hard time falling asleep, is called progressive relaxation. And so this is where you start either at your head or at your feet, and you tighten the muscle as tight as you can and then release it. And so you can get as like detailed with it as you want, like scrunch up each toe, scrunch up all your toes, all those things. So that progressive relaxation piece is can be really helpful, and you can do that anytime, but I find it especially helpful before bed, because it just helps really relax your body. There is a link to this in this document. There's something that's called emotional freedom technique, or some folks will call it tapping. And this is tapping into the meridian energy line in your body. And so it's a technique of, it's related to like acupressure. It's a technique of tapping on points in your body to release or shift energy. So there's a free video on there. It gives instructions on how to do it, but that's a body thing, right? That works really, really well for some people. And for people, it works both in the moment and sometimes as a prevention thing too. So that's kind of a cool strategy. This one is 5-finger mantra. So if you take your hand and you're going to watch, you see I'm tapping these fingers back and forth. And so that's another connecting strategy. And if it's helpful to put words to it, like I am loved enough. I am calm now. I am calm now. Okay. You could use whatever words you want to, but it's just another another connection kind of strategy, but a body one versus a breath one. This is one of the coolest things I've learned about. So this next one's called Shake It Out. Okay, so do you remember we were talking about adrenaline and cortisol and how that gets stuck in our body? And now we know through science, for folks who have had repeated trauma and childhood trauma, or intergenerational trauma, or historical trauma, or like all of these things, that creates physical changes in our body. And so there was a doctor who was working, I believe it was in Lebanon, during their civil war, and was in the basement when mortar shells were hitting a building. And so the mortar shell would hit the building and the building would shake. And there were adults and kids. And after the building stopped shaking, the kids would shake. It was little kids who would shake. And this doctor was like, what is going on? And so started studying this. So you can YouTube, if you YouTube like herds of zebras shaking, okay, you can see after a herd of zebras has been chased by a predator, they will all stand and shake. And what they are doing is literally shaking the adrenaline and cortisol out of their bodies. We humans are not good at this. We hold on to this stuff, and you know where we mostly hold it? In our shoulders and in our hips. So if you have back problems or hip problems, sometimes that's a result of that stuff getting stuck there. And so this doctor developed TRE, tension release exercise. And that link right there, you can access right now. They're doing free classes. It's a series of exercises that releases your psoas muscles. Your psoas muscles are the deep muscles in your hips. And so they'll talk about this. I've done this now multiple times. The first time I did it, I cried, but like in a release kind of way. In a, like, I didn't know why I was crying, but it felt really good. The second time I did it, I laughed. Like, these are all normal things that happen. It's literally like releasing basically toxic stuff we've held onto in our bodies. And so shake it out. So that's a series of exercises. So right now they're offering all of these classes for free online that you can do at home and learn TRE. And what the coolest thing about it is, once you learn how to do the exercises, you don't have to learn how to do them again. So the first time you do it, they walk you through the series of exercises, and then you could do it anytime you wanted to. So it's a really cool kind of technique kind of thing, that it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, maybe my body's been like, my brain can't do it. My body's been holding on to stuff. Stretching, yoga, really good for releasing muscle tension. Legs up, putting your legs up a wall, putting a block or a blanket under your hips to get your feet above your heart. And what that's doing is, remember when I talked about in fight or flight, when we get into that mode, all the blood literally like goes to our extremities to protect ourselves. It's just reversing the blood flow. So putting your legs up before bed can be really, really good, just for a little while. You can like put them up the wall. So it's that's another body thing. And then I put music and dance it out. So sometimes some of these grounding strategies, our body is too just like can't even, right? And so if there are ways to get your heart pumping or adrenaline moving, so for some folks taking a run, for some folks dancing to music, for people like literally, I mean, my kids, like you can literally see it, like they need to run off energy. And so getting your heart pumping can be really good as a body strategy too. The next body one is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this is thinking about 5 things in a room you see. So right now I could say like lamp, bed, dresser. There's a ladder outside my window because people are doing construction. Nightstand, okay? 4 things I hear. I hear my voice. I hear 3 things I feel, 2 things I smell, 1 thing I taste. Okay, so that's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then the last one is pressure. So acupuncture, which is with needles, acupressure, which is actual pressure, giving yourself a squeeze or having someone else put pressure on you, or weighted blankets. So those are pressure. You have pressure points in your body, but also for some folks that pressure can be really grounding. So that's body. Any questions on any of those? Okay, so this third category I called being, because these are, I would just call them like higher level things. So sometimes all you can do to ground is just a breath. Sometimes all you can do is figure out ways to get back in your body. And sometimes you might be able to say like, oh, okay, cool. I can step into some, I would just call them like higher level grounding things. So this one's beautiful. Reverend Leah reminded me of this one when in the question box sermon, someone had asked about how do you, like when there are so many things that are uncertain, how do you cope? And she said she writes an I know list. And what that is what you know to be true. So I know my name is Karen. I know I'm sitting on a chair. I know I'm in my house. I know I have enough food in my fridge. I know that I can, whatever it is. I know that my parents are Helene and Jerry. I know that I have 3 kids. I know that I live in Appleton. And you can write it or you can say it. But there's a real interesting brain connection with writing that can be really, really powerful. There's something about the tactile sensation of not just saying something or thinking something, but writing it. So writing that can be really, really powerful. The second one is to just let your thoughts come and go and just observe them, like not good or bad, to just notice. To just notice, like, what is it I'm thinking right now? What feelings is that connecting? Like what, and why that can be powerful is, if you remember at the beginning, that piece about the science piece, right? Sometimes those thoughts, right? That happened to me when I opened up the email where it was like, oh, we have no idea what's going to happen with school. And then my thoughts started going like, there's no way I'm going to survive like trying to homeschool 2 kids. Like we're not going to make it. I stepped back and I just started to observe that. And I also was like, okay, is this a thing I'm going to solve right now? No. Do I have any control over it right now? Pretty much no. Is it giving me anxiety and fear? Yeah. Okay. Now I get to choose what to do with that. So I sent an email to my mom so she could worry about it too. And then I put the email in my school email box, right, to reference later if I needed to. All right, so thoughts come and go. Okay, this next one I think is really cool. So I have mine. Okay, so this is a jar with a whole bunch of slips of paper in it. And in this jar are all sorts of grounding strategies. So I just took one out and it says heart-to-heart dialogue, which means like call somebody that I can talk to. Okay, so this jar, grounding jar, is full of stuff that I've tried before, because sometimes when you're in that moment, you're like, I can't even think of a thing to do. Okay, so for this, it works really well. Like here's a jar full of things that I could do for myself. I also put down comfort crate. So get a box or a laundry basket or whatever, and put in that box your favorite movie, favorite food, a tea you like to drink, a Epsom salt if you would like to take baths. I don't know, whatever it is that are things that you're like, these always bring me comfort. Your favorite music, I don't know, like whatever it is in a box. And so then you're like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm gonna go in my comfort crate and take something out, and then I have to do it. That's like the thing with this jar, like, or that I'll, but it's a way to give yourself easy access to like tools, because sometimes when you're in the moment, it's hard to remember those things, right? The next one on being as a full focus object. So let's see. I don't know. It doesn't even matter what it is. You could take like, I've got my water bottle right here. So sometimes this works really well with like tactile things. And so you take an object and you observe what's its color, what's its shape, how does it feel, how would I describe it, where did I get it, why do I like it? This is just another strategy to slow yourself down, right? And so for some people that's really comfortable, like that's really comforting. So it might be like a spiritual object for you, like it could be a rosary or mantra beads or a crystal or a tree like leaf, or I don't know, like this is as infinite as us, right? But again, it's full focus on something. This other one is again kind of a distraction, but a higher level and different thing. So like can't sleep, count backwards from 100. You're either gonna get bored or you might fall asleep, but right, focus on a color, see all the things with a color, do the alphabet, like I'm going to think of animals that start with each letter. So again, this is just a distraction thing. This next one is respond. And so sometimes when like a thought comes into my mind, right, or a feeling, and I want to respond to it, like not ignore it. There are 4 ways that I can choose to respond. So maybe it's a thought. That's a good example. So the thought is, I'm scared. Okay. A strong response to myself would be, it's okay. You're okay in this moment. Like, chill out. A soft response would be like, I love you. I'm going to give myself a hug. Facility response would be like, and I do this with my kids, like they're scared about, there's a monster in their room, and then we make the monster look silly. Okay. Or silent, like, yep, nope, just going to ignore you. So that's respond. Another higher level practice is meditation. And so I put on here, my favorite meditation app is called Insight Timer. It has both, you can time yourself, like I'm going to sit for 5 minutes, or it has guided meditations too. The Appleton Public Library has a free series of meditations with Joy Jordan. So that's Born Joy with Joy Jordan. And some of them are just like 5 minutes. And so these can be really, really, like this is, a higher level kind of thing. So like in the moment, like if I'm having like what I describe as an anxiety attack, I can't sit and meditate. No way. But this is like brain training. Okay. So if my brain is like, yep, we know how to do this, right? This can help in those moments of increased anxiety or overwhelm. Call, text a friend. If you've got somebody that's willing to be a person for you, this is a great strategy to, sometimes when you get caught in those thoughts up in your head, to talk with somebody else and talk through it with somebody else. There's something called the 4 Bs, which is really interesting. So sometimes we will have thoughts, and this is mainly beliefs about ourselves. And so if there's a belief that's getting stuck with you, like I'm not good, or I'm stupid, or I can't do blah, or I'm worthless, or whatever it is, you think about the 4 Bs. So you think about becoming aware of what you're telling yourself. Berate, which is really, right, like common when we get into those spaces. Berate is like we're beating up on ourselves. Do we really want to believe that? And then this being piece is, what do we want to replace it with? So that's just like a 4-part kind of thing. And if you really want to dig into that, there's a kind of therapy that's called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really amazing. It takes practice, but it's basically, you have a thought, right? Like maybe right now it might be like, everything is never going to, everything's not going to return to normal ever again. Okay. And you actually write out what's the evidence that supports that, and what are the feelings that go with it. And then you write down what's the evidence that doesn't support that. And then you go into like, what thought do I want to replace it with? So that's something, there's lots of free resources to do it. There are apps that can do it. If you're working with a therapist, that's something that can work. But it's a really powerful mechanism for when you're in a space, maybe sometimes it's a repeated thought that you're dealing with, and that can be really helpful. Okay, so, wow. I also put on the bottom here, if you want to scroll down a little bit more, some additional resources for you. The first group are wellness plans, and these are really cool. There's a free plan, there's a couple of different free plans, and there's one that's called Wellness Recovery Action Plans. These are really cool in terms of, I don't want to say crisis planning because that's not right, but it's really thinking about what are the signs that you're starting to get overwhelmed, right? Or what are the signs that you're starting to have a hard time? Writing down what are the things that work, writing down folks who can support you. So there's some wellness plan tools. There's a training, Tina, who's on here, is a fellow emotional CPR trainer. That this is about how do we like ground ourselves with our emotions and support ourselves if we're struggling in emotional distress or crisis, or how do we support others? And then I shared some resources for some warm lines. And so warm lines are, so there's a crisis line, right? If you're really feeling in crisis and really struggling. And warm lines are just like, I need somebody to talk to. So there are 4 peer-run respites in the state of Wisconsin that are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week answering phones. And then there's locally through 11 Fox cities, the eCPR warm line, which is answered from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And sometimes like folks will call you back, like they might not answer right away. But if that call or text or talk to another human is really helpful. And so if you don't have somebody that you can do that with, there are people who are like ready and willing to listen. And those are all free. So that's my spiel. So, oh, okay. So feel free if you want to unmute yourself or put in the chat box. I'm feeling anxious because Karen mentioned her dad more than me. I think she loves him more. I need to ground myself. Go eat some lefse. I love it. But I would love to hear from you. Are there things that I mentioned that you've used before? Are there things I didn't mention that work for you? Or if you have questions or whatever. Yeah, Carolyn.
Well, I raised a very challenging child, and
Yes.
as a single mother, and I journaled for
Yeah.
years and years. That way I could write it down and move on. Otherwise, you just keep rehashing.
Yeah. And for some folks, writing stuff down is really, really helpful. Karen Sandberg, who goes to the fellowship, and I both joked around one time that we were going to let each other know where our boxes of journals are that we didn't want our families to read, like those journals, you know, the ones that you wrote out, like as a, like, just in case. Here, Karen, here's where my journals are. Please take them before my family goes through my stuff. No, but for some folks, writing stuff down can be really, really, really helpful. And like I said before, that connection between pen to paper is really helpful. And there are some people I've talked to who said typing's way better because they can type as fast as they think. So that's a great way to like dump stuff out that you want to release. And some people will like burn those or tear up paper and put it in bowls of water as a way to like create kind of a practice around releasing it. Yeah. Thanks, Carolyn.
Well, but see, I wanted to keep it because I might want to see if it was done before or how I handled it before or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's
actually
great.
I still have them. I'm not quite sure
what to do with them now. Yeah.
They're in a box in the garage. You know what I mean? They're not in the house. Right?
Yeah.
I still journal, but now a friend gave me, when my son was a junior in high school, I think, she gave me a very nice journal, right?
Yeah.
And that's like, I'm not going to write that kind of stuff in that nice journal. And so I started writing, I kept 2 journals, a positive one and a survival one.
Perfect. That's great. Some people like to do like gratitude journals, and I think those are great too. Like there's all sorts of tools. So Tina had asked, can I get the notes? Yes. Marie has them in a PDF, and I think you can put the file in you can put it in the chat, ?
That's a good question. I don't see a way to put it in the chat, but
okay.
If you're okay with this, I can put it in the Facebook group.
Sure.
So I'm putting the link to the Facebook group. And if you, for whatever reason, don't have Facebook or can't access Facebook, then if you don't mind sharing your email in the chat, and I will email it directly to you.
Yeah, you can, in the chat, you can select like just Marie, and you can email that just to her, unless you want to share your email with everybody that's here. Maybe you do. I don't
know. And I put in information about an upcoming class on tapping. One of our fellowship members did one a couple weeks ago, and she's going to do a follow-up. Anyone can come, even if you didn't take the first class. It is really a fascinating way to kind of think differently and kind of shift the energies. I really like it a lot.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I've used it before, and it can be really there's I was like, what? Just like tapping on these different points could like it's fascinating. It's really cool. So and really works really powerfully for a lot of people.
So
where you got, sorry.
no,
Oh, go ahead, Jen. Oh yeah, you asked where I got this.
Yeah.
This is from this really cool collective of Black artists and makers in Milwaukee. And it actually, the little bead on here says resist.
Cool.
But I have to see if I have to track down the like the maker, because I got it at a fair in Milwaukee. So I don't know. But there are lots of these. I know that locally.
I've seen them at Aurora's Apothecary.
There you go. Aurora's Apothecary, which is on Richmond.
Okay. Thank you. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Well, I just have to say that was so much information. I'm really glad we have a handout. Thank you. I agree that people have to try out things and see what works for them, because not everything's going to be meaningful. So it's nice to have lots and lots of options. But I do personally have to say that I have had to pick a few and try them over the course of time too, because sometimes it kind of almost builds up a little bit. But I'm excited to try some new things. So thank you.
Yeah. And that's totally true. Like I gave you there, and like you could make like 6 more sheets about grounding strategies, because we're all just wired really differently. And so when I said be curious, like there's some stuff that might work for you in one moment and not in another moment, and that's frustrating. But thinking about, if you think about breath, body, being, right, as these 3 categories, and so if you try breath and that doesn't work, then try a body thing. And if the body thing doesn't work, then try maybe something higher level, like maybe you need more distraction than just a breath. So if it's helpful where you're like, that's overwhelming, now there's so many things, grounding strategies, to think really simply, if that makes sense.
And I think it's just really good to be reminded of this over and over again, because you forget about them. You've got a piece of paper and you put it away and you forget. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember that now. Could try that. Yeah. And if you think about, like, I really like the 4 S's. So slow down. What's a way that I can slow down the thought, feeling, emotion, breath, like slow down my body? What's the way that I can show up? What's the way that I can surrender or let something go? And what's the way that I can stay? Right? Yeah. Oh, thanks, Kathy. She says, I love that you do them with your boys. And they often remind